I'd become an absentee father, eating and drinking too much, unfaithful to my wife. I've got everything, but I am dying inside.
Forgiveness is taking a key and opening the cell and letting the prisoner out.
Once I had forgiven him, he was so grateful. It really changed our marriage. Plus, years later, my son's standing there and he says, "Mom, if you hadn't done that, imagine what our family would be like."
Almost 50% of all marriages are now ending in divorce. I think second marriages is somewhere around 68%. Third marriages, 78%. What you have to realize about forgiveness is that the prisoner is you.
The root of all of it is identity. Who are we? We have been made in the image of a creator God. And so discovering that is the key. You're not responsible for 50% of the marriage each. You're both responsible for 100.
Forgiveness is costly for the person who's giving it. Well, Denis and Marianne Beausejour, so great to have you both here. Thanks for being on the podcast.
We love being here.
Thank you.
Great to be with you, Ben,
Thank
and to meet your granddaughters this morning.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Exciting stuff. Well, people won't know this, but we'll explain to them. So we've known each other for 16 years now, been friends for a long, long time, and consider you both mentors in my life, and not just in my life, my children's lives, and now headed into the grandchildren's lives. You guys have an amazing story. I'm excited to dig in on that because a lot of what this show is about is what is counterculture to the way we're being taught to move forward in society, as families, as in professional life, in spiritual life. Social media, I think, is the root of a lot of that problem. I think we're getting a lot of really, really bad advice. And so trying to talk to people who don't just have advice, because it's one thing to say what you think. It's another thing to have lived it and who have lived out a legacy. And this show is about legacy building. I don't know anyone, and I honestly mean this, I don't know anyone who has a greater legacy than what you all have and what you've been able to do. So let's start with kind of giving people your background. You're both from Canada originally. Tell us about where you came from, how you all met in the corporate world. Give us the background.
I'm from a little town in Ontario. Dennis was born out in New Brunswick, and we met in Toronto. And we both come from fairly poor families. And I had, there were 5 in my family and 4 kids in your family.
Yep.
And we met in Toronto.
We had a lot in common, and graduated with business degrees and started at Procter Gamble in Toronto together, and started building our family there. Our 2 oldest were born there, and after that, P&G transferred me to Australia, and in Australia we had our 3rd son, Patrick, and I ran the P&G business there for 4 years. Then we moved to Toronto, to Japan.
Yeah, I got pregnant thinking I'd have another one in Australia, and before the end of my first trimester, we were living in Japan.
So before we go any further, total of 4 kids.
4 kids.
That's right.
Right? 3 boys, 1 girl, your youngest.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mariel's not your youngest, though.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, she is the youngest.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the youngest boy is Patrick.
Yes.
Yeah.
But your kids are all born in different countries, right? For the most part?
First
2 are
Canada.
Toronto.
Canada.
Yep.
And then
Pat was Australia.
And Mariel
was Japan.
was born in Japan.
Yeah.
Wild.
Crazy.
Wild.
Yep. And then after that, they moved me to China, and I launched Tide and Crest in China, and then they shifted me to Cincinnati, which is global headquarters. One of probably the milestone events in our life, besides our kids, was that we had a 7.2 magnitude earthquake in Kobe, Japan, on January 17th, 95. And I was almost killed in that. Both of our apartment on the 28th floor moved 15 feet in each direction, and my office on the 22nd floor, just about a quarter mile away, moved also 15 feet. Big product display bookcase fell, and it landed this far from my head. If it had landed on me, kaput. So that was a turning point, at least for me, of starting to think about why I was here and what am I doing. And you know, it was not great. I started doing an audit of my life, and I realized that I'd become an absentee father, totally wrapped up in my job, eating and drinking too much, unfaithful to my wife, and
Wait.
pretty self-centered guy. And yeah, I weighed about 60 pounds more than I weigh now. And, you know, it would began to realize, I mean, I've got everything materially, but I am dying inside. I'm empty, and I need a major rethink of what I'm doing.
In Hong Kong, a woman got up and started talking about a retreat. And he said, "Oh, 3 days off. That sounds great." He signed up. Well, that's not what it was.
I never been to a retreat, but this was a Christian retreat. And what it was, it's called the Walk to Emmaus. 15 guys over 3 days, 5 guys per day, gave a 25-minute story of their life. And it was almost like they were reading my mail. The first guy talked about priorities, and he was a famous surgeon, and he totally wasted his life on his work, and he was absentee from his family. And I'm thinking, this guy's reading my mail. And so over the course of 3 days, I did a survey of, man, oh man, I've got to change.
He came home, and the next morning he got up at 5. He got up every morning between 5 and 7. Finally, one morning I went down. I said, "What are you doing?"
So what ended up happening in this retreat in the hillside of Hong Kong was that I had an encounter with Jesus. And these guys were talking about Jesus, and it was completely not religious. It was the most down-to-earth, real, and they were telling their real story. And I'd never been in the situation where people weren't promoting themselves, weren't trying to make it look good, you know, and these guys were just, my life was screwed up, and it didn't get sorted out until Jesus saved me.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to me that weekend. I felt completely forgiven, completely free, completely understood, and I had peace for the first time in my life, like real deep peace.
It totally changed the direction of our life. He decided we needed to move back. We thought we'd go to Canada. We ended up in the U.S. in Cincinnati.
Yeah, and we just started over, and
you're still with Procter Gamble at the time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you were a VP of Procter Gamble.
Yep.
And if I remember correctly, you were actually on track at the time to be one of the youngest CEOs in Procter Gamble history, had you stayed that course potentially.
Well, you know, there's a lot of great people at P&G, but let's put it this way: when they moved me to Cincinnati, they had me be the global vice president of marketing. So I was on a list. I wouldn't say a short list, but I was on a list of, a less than a one-page list. But, there's so many great people.
Sure.
And, but what was interesting was that before leaving Hong Kong, I've been wrestling with, do I tell her everything? Is it just putting it off of my chest onto her? Or do I wait? And the defining moment came when at the end of the second chapter of Genesis, it says they were naked and they felt no shame. And it was one of the evening skinny dips that we took regularly, because in Hong Kong it's 99 degrees and 99% humidity all the time.
Yeah.
You turn your air conditioner off and your walls turn black.
Yeah.
So we were out having our typical skinny dip in our little pool at the back of our townhouse. And that's when the moment came where I decided to tell her what I'd done wrong. And I'm sobbing. I just poured it out. And she was...
And I had told him when we first got married, if you ever cheat on me, I'm out of here. Numerous times. So there was a lot riding on the line. And I just looked up and I thought, Lord, what do you want me to do? And I felt like he said, have I not forgiven you everything you've ever done? And I immediately agreed, and I forgave him.
We had a couple of weeks of questions here and there, and then that was it. You know, we often joke, she's never asked me again. I tell my story, and I'm ashamed every time I tell it, but that's the real me. She's never asked a question or said anything.
Why is that?
Because I forgave him. I'm not gonna throw it in his face. However, one time he cleaned through my stuff and threw out an envelope with $100 in it. I brought it up numerous times.
Right.
Where's my $100?
Well, yeah, she's still married to a neat freak, you know. And okay, I'm sorry.
Fair. But your point is well taken, right? Because this was something that when you said I'm letting it go. So
if you let it go, you got to let it go.
On the issue of forgiveness, let me just stop you there for a second.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people talk about this word all the time. It's actually debated often, I think, on social about what does forgiveness mean? Well, forgiveness does not mean to forgive and forget. It means that someone comes to you, they confess, they ask for forgiveness, you give it to them, but you're still entitled to questions and healing. How do you wrestle with that? Because there is a lot of question around that. Someone's unfaithful in the marriage, and then it has to be dealt with.
Right.
How do you recommend?
It's not a given that things would continue. However, when he came back, he had changed. Like, that was 4 months after he'd gone on that walk. And there had been so many changes. His language was better. He was more attentive. He was a better dad. I mean, he had a transformation. So when he confessed this, I could not only forgive him, but I had seen that he had been transformed. So I had very little concern about whether anything would ever happen again.
Yeah. It's interesting about forgiveness because, you know, when you forgive somebody, you are not condoning what they did. You are taking the hurt and the cost, and you are deliberately freeing that person from that debt. It's costly, right? But at least in the Christian worldview, what you're doing is you're taking that and you're putting it on Jesus on the cross. That's part of all of what the mess of the cross was. So you are basically, it's costly, but ultimately he paid the price.
Let's dig on the costly thing though. I've actually heard you say this before. And the first time I heard you say it, really had to think through it. Forgiveness is costly for the person who's giving it. It costs them something.
Yeah.
That is not a popular idea, right? No. If I'm forgiving someone, I haven't done anything wrong. They're the ones who have done wrong. So it should cost them something, not cost me something. So what do you mean by costly?
Well, it's costly in that you have to let go of the debt. So the debt could be emotional, it could be physical, it could be financial, but you have to say, you know, I'm going to forgive that. I'm going to forgive that debt. You know, you might want revenge. You might want justification. You might want some magic rewind of history, but you can't get that. You cannot go back. You have to say to the person who's asking for it, I forgive you.
But you also don't realize the benefits. Like, once I had forgiven him, he was so grateful. It really changed our marriage. Plus, years later, my son's standing there and he says, Mom, if you hadn't done that, imagine what our family would be like. So there's gratitude there too. So there's benefits, but people don't see that. They just see what they're losing.
I heard your son, I believe this was at the retirement party that y'all had. And this is the son who today has 9 children.
Right.
And I remember him talking about how great his dad is and how much he loves you and wants to emulate you. He said, but my mom saved my life by staying. I think it's hard to understate the impact it has when you say, I'm going to forgive, because to your point, it's costing you. And you might be able to say to yourself, well, I'm righteous if I hold on to this, right? Because this is an offense that happened to me, or this was a hurt that happened to me. And those hurts are very real. But choosing to release it for a greater purpose and believing that God has something. And then you look at what your lives have become, and we'll talk more about that later, but what your lives have become and looking back on it, I think there's something profoundly missing in our society today of people who have the same testimony you all have. Because you know what they have the testimony of is, I'm not putting up with that. I'm out of here. I'm leaving. And they don't have great stories at the end of it. They have a lot of sad stories about how things went really badly, and it's their fault that everything went badly.
Well, and there's
They become
two
victims.
They become victims of it.
and there's two benefits to the forgiver. First of all, the forgiver is completely released from bitterness.
Yes.
If you're holding on to that thing in there, you have the Bible talks about a root of bitterness. And, when you forgive, God pulls that out of there and sets you free from that. So that's the number one benefit to the forgiver. The second benefit to the forgiver is Jesus said, if you don't forgive other people their sins against you, then I'm not going to forgive your sins. Kind of what he told her under her breath in the pool. And so if you are holding on, thinking that you're righteous, you're actually in spiritual checkmate.
Right.
Because nothing is happening. Your sins are just, your own stuff is just getting piled on you, and the weight of it is just going to crush you if you don't let go. So if you want freedom and real joy, you got to forgive. And that's why he set it up that way.
I've heard someone say, I'll kind of butcher the quote, but something to the effect of, forgiveness is taking a key and opening the cell and letting the prisoner out. But what you have to realize about forgiveness is that the prisoner is you. That you're the one you're actually releasing from that prison when you forgive somebody. You're not releasing the other person from anything.
Right.
And I think that's one of the fears people have about forgiveness. If I forgive, they'll get away with it. If I forgive, they won't hurt or suffer the way that I did. When the truth is, forgiveness is about you. It's about releasing yourself from this thing.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you see that in Les Miserables. You see that, in movie after movie after movie. It's the great story of the freedom that is given if you can walk in forgiveness. Yeah, absolutely true. Or Jordan Peterson talks about the archetypes, the great archetype stories, right? That seem to transcend through literature and through history and through religion. It fits into everything because it's embedded in who we are, right? And forgiveness is one of those things. I remember something you said to me once, Dennis, though. I was actually thinking about it on the drive over here. You had mentioned that, Marianne had forgiven you, but that, and you talked about you had seen change in him. But I remember one time we talked and you said, but not everything changes in an instant. And you said to me, it took me 10 years to fully change the way I spoke to her. Because I realized that over the years that I had a harshness with her, or I had a certain way that I spoke to her. And that took a long time. That wasn't instantaneous. I think one of the things people also get wrong, especially young people are getting wrong, is they're looking for, well, if we need to fix our relationship, everything has to be fixed today. It all has to be different right now. And if this person's not completely transformed, then how can I trust them? How can we move forward? It takes time to really become who you're going to be. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And one of the biggest things with my lifestyle was that I was angry. I had a lot of anger. And that probably took me 10 years to get worked out of my system, to the point where I'm not looking at her and she sees the old face. I can't even say a word and she would still feel my anger. And so that's a process. That just takes time and healing. He healed some things right away, like I haven't looked at pornography in 30 years, but other stuff, it was a battle. There was one night I got prayer and I ended up down on the ground, just weight of the Spirit on me. And the people were praying over me. I could understand everything they were praying. And all of a sudden I feel like a hand on the back of my neck and yank. And I go, ow, that hurt. It felt like somebody was pulling my spine out of my body from here down. And the person praying over me said, Dennis, that's your selfish ambition. You're not going to need that anymore. And I thought, that is me. That's my problem. That's one of my core problems is selfish ambition. And he just took it out. But I didn't take all the anger out. I had to work that through.
Yeah, it's a process. It's also a process of finding each other, right? Because obviously you have a marriage that to that point, most people would look at and say is successful. You have a marriage that was probably, not to throw everyone at P&G under the bus, but probably pretty typical of what an executive's life was at the time. You have this family life over here. You have some secret life happening on this side of it. You have a professional life that is the focus of everything. You have this radical experience with Jesus, this radical conversion experience. You move back to Cincinnati. What is the process like of finding each other again and establishing kind of a new marriage within that same covenant?
Yeah. So we were 15 years in then. So we'll be 45 years this year.
Congratulations.
Yeah. And it was like starting over. And I felt a little bit like Bambi. My spiritual legs were young, like months old. I've been months along the journey so far. She's been, let's say, 5 years of serious, following Christ, studying the Bible. So she's miles ahead of me spiritually at this point. And so it was like, all right, what do we do? And she said, well, got to find a good church. So we found a good church, found a good school, and just started one day at a time, and I had to learn how to do my job differently. I had to learn how to hear the gentle whispers of the Spirit in what I'm doing every day. Do I take this meeting? I should hold on this email before I need to go and talk to this person. And it was really interesting to learn how to, just walk through an executive responsibility in a simultaneous conversation with God. And so that was a trial and error, day by day. I used to take a silent retreat about every 6 months, and I would just get a hotel room for one overnight, and I would just come in, leave work early, come into work late, and spend 18 hours just listening, learning how to listen. And I think he's telling me this. I think he's telling me this. I think he's telling me this. So some of my best ideas at Procter Gamble were about we were at that time. The stock market was saying your sales are not growing fast enough.
Okay.
So we were trying to revamp our marketing and get the sales growing. And our advertising agencies, the way it worked then in those days is we would pay them 15% on whatever media we bought. So if brand X has a $10 million media budget, the agency gets 1.5 million, and then we buy TV and radio and print. Well, every year we'd cut the media budgets to make the profit forecast. And it was we all knew it was the system, it was unhealthy, it was broken. But what it did to the agencies is it cut out their revenue underneath their legs in their fourth quarter. And so I'm pondering this problem, and I felt the Spirit say to me while I was meditating and praying, why don't you pay them for sales growth? And I'm going, that's interesting. We could shift to a model that's based on sales performance, and they get a baseline remuneration. And then if they can grow the sales and they can make advertising is better, then grow the sales. And so anyway, we embarked on that. People were fighting it like cats and dogs. But eventually it turned into what is common now, a fee system. And we went from having the run-of-the-road creatives on our business to now having the best creatives on our business, because that's where the money was. And we started winning gold lions in Cannes, and there was a valuing of creativity. And it's just like, why don't you pay them for sales? I thought, oh. So he's been helping me out of the system, and down here, and helping me get up to periscope depth and look at the big picture. And so that's what he does. He's amazing. He's the best journalist there ever was. He's the best marketing guy there ever was. He's the best, manager of a household that ever was. And what does he think? And so learning that was just transformative for not only my enjoyment of the work, but my impact.
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible, because I think, again, if you'll get out of your own way, it's also interesting how what leads you into this is the concept that stop cutting, right? Because you're not going to cut your way to prosperity. It kind of fits into that abundance principle. There's enough here, but encourage creativity. And there's no question, I think, that God is a God of creativity, of design, of
absolutely,
beauty and art and all these different things. And so, but you don't get there by saying, well, if we just hold on to more, right? That generosity principle. And I'm not necessarily that P&G was being generous per se, but in a way they were, right? Shifting to that model shifts to a more generous model, which is if we succeed, you succeed, we succeed together, rather than kind of holding everything at that status quo, which, to your point, you said we knew was not working. We knew it was toxic. We knew it was a broken system, but we stay in it. And I think that we see that also happening outside of the corporate world. We see that happening in families. We see it happening in churches. We see it happening in relationships.
Yeah.
People say, I know this system isn't working. I know this is broken. I know this is flawed, but I don't know any other way. So I just keep doing it. We just keep going through the same cycle.
Politics.
Oh, well.
Don't.
Definitely broken.
Don't get him started.
Definitely
Don't
broken.
Get him started.
Yeah, maybe the most broken of them all.
Right.
Because it actually feeds off the dysfunction.
Yeah.
But it's our dysfunction is feeding off of, right? Because we're dysfunctional in just about every single part of our lives. So you're back in Cincinnati. You're still working for P&G, succeeding, watching God bless in all these areas. Families being blessed, things are going well. And at a certain point, you decided no more P&G. I'm going to become a pastor.
Yeah. It was a bit of a process, but I started enjoying doing that kind of work.
Yeah.
I was preaching in a lot of different cities and different things, and I enjoyed doing that. I realized every bit as much as I was enjoying doing the marketing stuff.
And I was a little bit of a whoa.
Yeah.
Said, where you are, you have breakfast and lunch for people. You've got a box of Bibles there. You're handing them out. I said, you have a position as a business person that a pastor doesn't have. But
no, we talked it over a long period of time. And, most of the time, God says, bloom where you're planted. When you come into the kingdom, just stay put, bloom where you're planted. And that's obviously the majority. But this was, there was something about the Word of God, about the Bible, that started me at 5 o'clock in the morning on the first day after the retreat. And that became a real theme in my life of really understanding, believing, praying, teaching, and obeying the Word of God. And so that was a process going on in our life and in our family. And so it was a few years, but eventually one morning near Thanksgiving of 1999, I was studying the life of Abraham, and in Hebrews 11 it says, and Abraham left not knowing where he was going. And I thought, wow. And then I felt the Lord saying, today's the day. So I went up to her office, which is off our bedroom. And I said, honey, you're not going to believe this, but I think the Lord said, today's the day for me to go down and resign.
and I said, you're not going to believe this, but last night when I was at Bereans waiting for the kids to play hockey, I saw this table of 75% off, and this little thing sitting there said, "The Road to Ministry." And I shook my head and bought it, and here it is out of my desk drawer.
What?
Yeah,
Crazy.
The
I have
night
not heard this
before.
story.
The night before.
Wow.
So for me, that was pretty much a strong, powerful confirmation, and God does that. So the first question was, okay, I'm going to go down and let him know today. And the second question from the kids was, can we still go to the school that we're going to? Can we still play hockey and golf? And I'm sure Marianne was thinking, can we still stay in this house?
Yeah.
And so I went down and let my boss know, and he was very, very affirming. He said, this doesn't surprise me, but what are you going to do? And I said, actually, I don't know. And at P&G, if you don't have a plan, that's like waving the white flag. You might as well take me out of here.
Yeah.
But anyway, they asked me to stay till April to get my replacement on board, and we did. And it took from there almost 4 years for us to end up at the church.
Wow.
We ended up doing all kinds of different ministry. It was almost like a little trial and error process. And then, Marianne had her second bout with breast cancer. And so when she was healed and through that, we kind of felt some freedom to take action. And and it was a miracle how we ended up at Marymount, where you met us for the first time. It was a miracle how that happened. It was my son had a friend at William and Mary, and her father came to visit her, and he went out to lunch with them. And he, among other things, was an accountant. And my son said, "What else do you do?" And he said, "Well, I'm the pastoral search committee chair for our church." And my son said, "Well, you need to talk to my dad." And that's how it happened.
Wow.
Crazy. So, and it was really during those years, where your family joined our congregation. It was really in those years where we were, intentionally discipling our kids, teaching them everything from how to buy a used car to, how to handle your schoolwork, mow the lawn, whatever, teach them about money and all that. So we were benefiting from families that we knew that were 10 years ahead of us. So we were implementing some of their ideas, and we realized, wow, there's so many things that you can do to teach a child their identity, to help them manage their life in a productive direction. And, we had missionaries living with us. We had table conversation. We had communion often at our house, which was an opportunity to rehearse the gospel. Why did Jesus come? How do you forgive somebody? All the things we've been talking about.
Yeah.
So, and we were in a very rich environment of multi-generational families. And we basically, we want to be a family of irresistible influence. And we want to point people to life in the kingdom, the abundant life of the kingdom.
Yeah.
And so we worked it out and practiced and learned and trial and error with our kids, and had just an amazing, almost 2 decades also pastoring other families and learning from them. And that was kind of like a masterclass in family building. And some of those families.
I do.
They're everybody does it a little bit differently, but we adopted a vision, a strategy, how we were going to go about doing this, and refined it over the years. And now, 3 of them are married, and they're all, living in the kingdom,
right?
Enjoying the kingdom. And now with 14 grandkids, we're kind of starting over again. We're
He's got his grandson over there. Okay, this is how you cut the lawn. Oh no, again.
Here we go again.
Here we go.
14 grandkids is that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And 10 of those grandkids live in Cincinnati with y'all.
Yeah.
Right. So you're very involved, but you're also involved with the ones in Chicago.
Yeah.
Because every time I call you, you're on the road to Chicago or coming back from Chicago. Right.
Yeah. Well, what happened is when their first one was born, I said, okay, we have a deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to see him every month of his life. So, and Robin, my daughter-in-law, bought into it. So sometimes we're up there, sometimes we're back. Now, when we retired and we took time off, she said, oh, how long are you going to be in Europe? I said, well, we leave August 7th. We'll be back October 27th. She said, what about September? I said, well, think of it as a mulligan.
Yeah.
She said, I don't believe in mulligans. She trained those two kids, who were 4 and 6 at the time, to walk. And they flew into Madrid, took a 5-hour bus ride to where we were walking the Camino, walked for 3 days, took the bus ride back, and flew home.
Wow.
They walked 10 miles every day carrying their own backpack. Yeah.
At 4 and 6?
At 4 and 6.
They were actually 3 and 5. They were almost 4 and 6.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And now, when we have to decide who's going to go where, it's sort of like, I'll drive to Chicago.
By the way, I believe in mulligans.
Do you believe in mulligans?
Yes, I do.
You're fine with it. You know, I remember when we first arrived in Cincinnati, our kids were small, but you know, growing up, my parents did a lot of great things with us. Some things that maybe, you know, weren't so great. There were two things they were very focused on: school, obviously, because we were insane and everyone was graduating from college when they were 15 years old, and then reading the Bible. Those are the two things that were very, very intentional. The rest of our lives were really not very intentional, but that was very intentional. And I remember when I met you guys and coming into the culture that you had built within Marymount, I just had never really experienced families that were so intentional in everything that they were doing, right? Everything had a purpose behind it. As you said, cutting the grass meant something, and, you know, doing daily chores meant something. And what are we doing as a family with this and this? And it transformed our family in so many ways, completely transformed the way we saw those things, right? And it has remained that way. It's so interesting because obviously, you know, our family's in a challenging season right now, but it's in a challenging season with a bunch of adults. The entire time that those kids were kids and teenagers, we lived that very, very intentional life. Mm-hmm. And there's so much value to the kind of people that they become as a result of being in that space. And I look at the two who work with me here, and kind of where they are in their lives, and you see that intentionality comes out in everything still. It's like you've trained them to be intentional with their decision making. You train them to be intentional in the relationships that they're in their own. My son, who has 2 kids of his own, intentional with everything he's trying to do with them, and where he doesn't know what to do yet, comes to me and says, how can I be more intentional in these things? Yeah. And so you do completely transform. It's not just a transformation of your own kids, but it's the legacy becomes very different when things are intentional. And I just think people miss this. Mm-hmm. I think they miss the idea that the time you have with your kids, we used to say, long days, short years, right? And in those long days, you got to be intentional because they're short years and you run out of time in which to train them up in that.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, that's right. And we've seen that with your kids this morning. Is fantastic. I mean, the thing I would also say is we don't just have 18 years to get things right. Mm-hmm. You know, I always had 18 in my head as kind of, that's when I lose influence. But what I've discovered is, you know, with my oldest, who's now 40, I've had more influence in the last 20 than I did in the first 20 because we have a dialogue every week, and he's going through business problems. He's financial questions, health problems, whatever they are. And we're still, because we're connected. So, and you've done that, you know, you've stayed connected, and you keep having that influence. And then of course, grandchildren, you know, we're not the Brussels sprouts anymore. We're the ice cream.
Right. Right.
You know, they're doing all the hard work, but we're coming in with some very intentional add-ons. Like Marianne's got an amazing thing she does. She calls it
Monday with Mimi. And I take only one. So when you're 1 of 9, to get the day by yourself with Mimi, I mean, you pick the books, you sit where you want, and I try to say yes to everything they want to do. It doesn't always work, but generally. And so every time I walk in the door, is it my Monday with Mimi? No, today's Thursday. I'm just here for the day.
Yeah.
It's been great.
And so how does that rotation work? It's one every 9 weeks, 10 weeks?
Well, sometimes it's longer if we're away.
Well, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, but and she doesn't do them all. She waits till they're
Probably
maybe 3 years
4.
old.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't do the babies.
Yeah, toddlers aren't going to really understand that.
And when she goes over on Thursdays, she's got the toddlers while mom's out doing stuff. And
They think it's Monday with Mimi.
Is there
They think-
Are we going to your house? No, we're going to stay here.
so what's beautiful about what Marianne does is, first of all, she's imparting all kinds of her gifts. Like she's very crafty. She's very great cook. So sometimes they make, the world's biggest chocolate chip cookie, but they're mixing the batter and doing all that stuff, which they love. Sometimes they're playing games. And I think her secret sauce is she gives them a love of reading. She reads so many books to them.
We can
They
do a ton
love
of things
reading.
all day long. And when I'm driving them home, I said, so what was your favorite part? Reading. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for me, when they get to be about midway through grade 2 and they can read and write, then I start them on what I call Papa's Bible College. So I meet with them every 2 weeks or so, one-on-one for an hour and a half, and I always include something sweet, like Dairy Queen or Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts or something. Because in the day of Jesus, when they were teaching the kids to write the letters, they would put honey on the writing tablet. And if the student got it right, they could lick their finger. And, the idea was the word of God is sweet. Well, I'm trying to do that now. And so I spend time with them. We watch videos. I ask them questions. And as they get older, then we're talking about the bully at school. We're talking about the first boyfriend. We're talking about all the issues that are going on, sibling rivalry, bullying your sibling, real life. These are just normal kids. And it's like, well, what would Jesus say about that? And I'm trying to help them develop a worldview of how Jesus wants us to live. And I want it to be practical into their daily life, so that they see that the scripture is practical, is relevant, and is helping me right now. And that they have a worldview that's indestructible by the time they're 15, where they've seen the miracles. I mean, these kids pray. I've got a sister who's in stage 4 lung cancer in her bones. She's had 2 spots in her bones. 3 years ago, they told her she only had a year.
3 years ago.
Yeah.
3 years.
And those spots have not changed in 3 years.
She
Can't be cured, but
She wouldn't
there's
do
no
chemo,
new
and they did
spots.
radiate it.
There's no new spots. And those grandkids pray every night at dinner. They got a prayer list on the chalkboard by the table. And they're praying for Auntie Shelley. And, they're seeing the work of God. She's been given all this extra time. And they know their prayers, count, matter. So it's just, it's very daily, practical, helping them. And then, if we're getting into how do you mow the lawn, or if we're getting into how do you skate with more power, fine, and how do you make a pot holder for your mother that's going to keep her from burning her fingers? How do you make one of those things on a hand loom? And it's just our goal is to impart the values, the knowledge, the wisdom, and even how to work and how to accumulate wealth, you know, into their daily life. And, you know, Psalm 112 is all about the generous person who trusts in God. And in one of the verses in that psalm, it says, their children will be mighty in the land. Now, you've got some children that are mighty in the land here because you've deliberately been generous and invested in that. And that's what we like to see happen to our kids.
How do you teach the kids at that age about finance? What do those teachings look like?
Well, the parents each have their own system.
Okay.
The way we did it, when they turned 13, I guess it was, they got $150 a month, and they had to pay for everything. So school books, clothing,
CDs,
and
video
so
games.
A couple of them would go to Value City, and some would go elsewhere. And one was sort of a banker because the other couldn't stay within his budget, but you never got an advance. So it was a very, very much a learning experience.
Yeah, but we basically taught do the 10-10-80 plan. You know, save 10%, give 10%, and live on 80%. And you know, our son Michael, he's using debit cards.
Oh wow!
And an electronic banking system. But his kids have all have all started saving. And when they reach a certain age, for us it was 15, then we open an investment account, teach them about compound interest and all that stuff. And our kids are going to be doing the same thing.
Yeah, I think that's super important because we talk about this a lot, but you know, in the public school system, private schools in America, like no one's teaching about finance. They're not teaching you about money. They're not teaching you about any of these things. My son even said to me recently, he says, you know, they make you take things like trigonometry and geometry and algebra. And he says, and I've never used any of that in my adult life. But you know what they never tell you how to do is like how interest works. Right? They don't teach you that kind of thing. And I think that's so important to impart that. I also want to ask you about, it rewinds us a little bit, but you mentioned about your children now as adults and the relationship being different, them needing you in many ways in a different way, but more than they did before. And I've heard somebody say that one of the transitions that happens when a child becomes an adult is that hopefully they begin to see their adult parent no longer as a parent, but as a human. And that there's a problem that we have right within our society. Well, first of all, we've what is the word? We've infantilized people to the point where, you know, this whole conversation about the frontal lobe isn't developed till you're 26. We act as if people don't have walking around sense until they're 26 years old. But the other thing that happens is we're holding back generations of young men, young women, holding them back by telling them that they're incompetent and they can't do anything. And part of what that does is it prevents you as an adult from seeing your parent as an adult. And so the relationship becomes very confused at a certain point, right? And so the parent has to be this perfect person. This parent has to be somebody who kind of holds this exceptional role of like, you were everything I wanted you to be, or you are the source of all my trauma. And what they said is that there's a process that people should be going through that seems to be disappearing, where you transition from seeing your parent as Superman, Superwoman, to the point where you see them as a human being like you, and you actually learn more from them when you begin to see them as a human, because then you realize the stuff I'm feeling, the stuff I'm struggling with at 22, 23, 25 years old, they went through that too. Oh, I wonder what I can actually learn from them. Do you think that's true?
I think that even when they're young, the fact that we've made a mistake and admit it and ask for forgiveness is a pretty big thing. Then they see that we're not perfect. And then as they get older, I will always be their mom, but they are also adults. So I treat them as adults. And I think there are so many people who they would go home for the weekend and revert back to the way they were as kids. It's crazy. But if you treat them as adults, they will reciprocate. And like I said, it's not like you're their friend and you're not still their mom or dad, but they're adults, and treat them with respect.
Yeah. And, you know, at this stage, we're more consultants.
Right.
We're not carrying the weight of the decision. We're not, you know, involved in all the nitty gritty, but we do talk about how are you teaching them about money, and we do talk about how you're teaching them about work, and so we're having the conversation, and it's been a real joy to watch your kids become parents.
Yeah,
It really is.
Yeah.
It's one of the most, I think one of the most important transitions in a man's life is to become a father.
Yes.
And a woman to become a mother. When you become a grandparent, now there's a generational vision that you start to have. You start to see, wait a minute, this is powerful. I need to figure out how to help multiply this. And you're thinking longer term. And so, in all of our kids' families, they're really seeing the children as assets. Psalm 127 and 128, it talks about these olive shoots around the table, and they are taking new ground, and they're defeating the enemies at the gate. So you see your kids as capable. So our kids learned how to grind the coffee and run the coffee maker at age 5 or 6. At age 10 or 11, they're making all the lunches for school. At age 12 or 13, they're cooking 3 meals a week for the whole family. So it's like everybody rests together, everybody plays together, and everybody works together. And so you do your laundry starting in grade 8. I don't want to do my laundry. Well, your wife will thank me 20 years from now. You're going to know how to do laundry. No, they're capable, and so they're assets. They're not liabilities. The world sees children as liabilities to the environment, to everything, and they're assets. And so when if you have 4 children, you're doing your whole country a favor. You're making sure Social Security doesn't fall apart, and but we're not doing that.
Right.
We're delaying marriage. We're having way too few kids, and our society. I mean, Japan's off a cliff now, and China's struggling.
Well, Japan is aren't they importing men in now and paying them to have children with women there? Have you heard about this?
I have not heard about that, but I have
think
heard about
the government is now paying them.
Robots are serving meals to people in old folks' homes because they can't get people to work there.
Wow.
So you have a person who's 90 years old is in a room all day by themselves, and the robot delivers their meals. Can you imagine how sad that is?
It's so sad.
It's dystopian.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's because they didn't obey, the first principle of the kingdom. The kingdom is about increase. It's about having. This is where the abundance comes from. Is like have more children, raise them up, and so we're disobeying the foundational principle of how we're supposed to live, and we're seeing all these negative consequences.
Well, and we're totally out of alignment, right, with what we're designed to be, what we're supposed to be.
Right.
You're absolutely right. We were talking about this earlier. I mean, so my son, my daughter-in-law, they got married 4 years ago. They were 18 years old. And of course, everybody's like, what are you guys doing? You're 18. I remember I had gone to him. She's going to see this and be like, what? And I told him, I said, you don't have to get married. You can just date her. And he said, Dad, you were basically my age when you got married. Okay. No, fair. And I'm so glad that God gave him the woman that he gave him. And she's amazing. And he could not have a better wife or mother for his children, right? So proud of her. But it's hard, right? So what they look at is, this is so hard. And I think you get into it very young. But the truth is, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of this. It's hard no matter how old you are. If you're 18 or 20 or 22, or if you wait till you're 30 or 32 or 40 and 42, or here in Miami, you're 50 and you still haven't gotten married and you're still running around trying to figure out who you're going to find the right person. I actually think it gets harder as time goes on because you're actually now battling yourself.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
No, I agree with you. We have a family summit every year where we go everybody, spouses, kids, grandkids. We bring a babysitter. We get a week at a lake, boats, jet skis, all that stuff. But we talk about what's important. And one year, one of our daughter-in-laws, Sammy, she brought a teaching that said life is basically 4 seasons. Spring is 0 to 22.
Okay.
Summer is 22 to 44. Fall is 44 to 66, and winter is 66 to 88. In the summer, the spring you've got to grow and get yourself organized. In the summer you got to plant, and that's starting a family in your early 20s, and going through all the decisions and difficulties together. And then at 44, you start harvesting. You get kids starting to go to college, kids starting to make their way in the world, and then at 66, you got grandparenting, and however long you're going to last, you make the most of that. And in a family, if somebody doesn't fulfill their responsibilities for that season, everything gets backed up.
Yeah.
Everything gets backed up. And so you have people who are 44 trying to start planting.
Right.
And it's probably there.
Right.
IVF can only go so far.
Well, but the harvesting is much harder too when you're out of the wrong season.
Right. There is no harvest if you didn't plant.
Right.
Right.
If you didn't plant at all. But if you're trying to say, well, I'm starting the planting season in my 40s, right? Harvest is going to be a lot harder when the time comes.
Right.
But when one generation doesn't move along, the other generation gets stuck also.
Yeah. And so, and in our generation, we need to relinquish things. We need to.
Yes.
I turned over the church. I'm turning over, other ministry things I'm doing. But now we're supporting, others who are in that season of harvesting, and we like to think that our fruit is growing on other people's trees.
Yeah. Well, I know it is. It absolutely is. A couple questions I want to ask you guys, kind of almost like lightning round, but questions that I'd love to hear your thoughts on. I'll start with one that this is a cheat because I heard you say this morning, but I think it's worth repeating for the audience here, which is you said when you meet with young couples and you sit down and you do counseling with them, you ask them to look at each other and say something. I want you to share this.
Yeah. We have them look at each other and say, I am a sinner. I am going to disappoint you.
I am a sinner. I'm going to disappoint you.
Yeah.
How does that go for most people when they have to do that?
They look at you like, not
Yeah.
us.
I mean, they're holding hands. Oh, we're all in love, and then, reality.
Yeah.
But it usually stuns them, but then it usually breaks the ice. And we can now talk about what's really going on and what it's going to take to grow together, to forgive together, to repent together, in that journey. Yeah. So it's really
because it's coming. It's inevitable, right?
Inevitable.
Yeah.
It's not whether.
Right.
It's when.
Yeah. Right. It's when and how often.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So when it comes to when and how often, how do you see young people in terms of teaching them how to grow together? Because this is part of the process. Too much of what's happening now is these people, but especially younger people, are living these lives that are almost parallel lives. They're not really intersecting with each other very well anymore. And I'll blame a lot of that on a social media world in which they're escaping. There's a lot of escapism into that world. Yeah. And how do I kind of, look over here? What would you say to that?
Yeah. So when we work with a young couple, we're trying to teach them how to do 5 things. All right. The first thing we want them to do is to learn how to study the Bible, discover what it means, talk about what they're going to do to apply that, and then pray together to make that happen. And so that's foundational skill number 1. Number 2 is listening with empathy, pinpointing the other person's feeling, not to fix it, just to connect. So that when she's expressing a feeling, I can play it back to her, and so that she knows that I know how she's really feeling, that I get her in this moment. That's foundational skill number 2. Number 3 is resolving conflicts. So, and the core skill to resolve conflicts is empathic listening. Because what you don't want to do in a conflict is fix the issue. You want to make sure you understand how each other is feeling about that issue first. And then you can move to, well, why am I feeling that way? And there might be some feelings that are based on lies. There might be some feelings that are based on previous wounding. And so you work through that. And then you're ready to fix the issue. The 4th skill is to develop a family vision. Why do you think God is bringing you together? What does he want to do through you? And then the 5th is learning how to do a budget together. And really there you have typically a saver and a spender. And you need to teach them how to become a steward. So they both have to change. The savers always think they're superior, you know, to the spenders, but you got to bring them to see that they're both in the wrong spot. They need to become stewards of what God has given them, not just their money, but their time and their talent as well, right? So those are the 5 skills. And the research says if you do number 1 together, your chance of a divorce is less than 1%. That's why it's number 1. But these other 4 skills will keep you from divorce.
Right.
I mean, that's the marriage that's built to last is really what we call it.
The divorce issue, I think, is one of the biggest problems that we face in America. Not divorce itself. It's the breaking up of families, the fracturing of families, the belief system that's been built on it's time for me to go live my best life, right? It's my turn to go do that. We see the statistics, almost 50% of all marriages are now ending in divorce. I think second marriages is somewhere around 68%. Third marriages, 78%. Basically, if you get married 3 times, your chances of staying there are terrible, which demonstrates that the problem is not I was married to the wrong person problem, right? The problem is internal.
Yeah.
But
right.
The ramifications for it are so severe, I think, over the culture right now. And I think it's part of the reason that you have so many young people who aren't even getting married anymore. So millennials and Gen Z, as they call them, people who are my kids' age, will say, well, I'm not even going to bother getting married. There's an entire epidemic of young men who say, I'm not getting married at all. And it's hard to argue with why when they explain to you, right? They look at their parents and they say, well, my parents couldn't make it. That didn't work. They watch I hate the word trauma. I think it's so overused, but it is a traumatic experience for a family to go through a divorce. I've heard therapists say that it's the closest thing to a death in terms of how you have to mourn your family when kids go through that.
Yeah.
And then trying to figure out, this system, it feels like the divorce system is really gamed. It's not in the interest of families. Yeah. It's not in the interest of kids. It's actually in the interest of lawyers, who are the ones who write most of it. Yeah. Sorry, we're going to have some divorce lawyers on at some point. We'll talk about it. But it's a huge problem. I'm looking forward to that. It's a mess. And I think what it's done is it's deeply damaged families, and it's deeply damaged the culture, and it's deeply damaging the next generation and the next generation and the next generation. But it's so prevalent that if you say anything negative about divorce in this culture, you're also demonized, right? How could you? Oh, you must want people to stay in loveless marriages or want people to stay in terrible situations. No, I think it's recognizing that your situation may be bad, but that doesn't mean blowing it up makes it better. In a lot of cases, I think it makes it worse. I'm curious, Marianne, for you. You probably know a lot of women who have been through divorces who have come and talked to you. You chose a very different path. How is it? How do you see that in terms of not only the women who talk to you, but how do they see you in terms of you sticking it out?
Well, I think that divorced women did not realize what they were going to end up going through. They just knew that I hate where I'm at. I want out. And I generally try to talk to people before they're divorced because you can forgive anything. And so I feel like I've saved a few marriages because I've been able to talk to them. But yeah, there's just so many negative things that happen with you and then your children. And just like, I just have friends there's just so many moms and dads and stepmoms and dads. It's so complicated and it's just draining.
Oh, I agree. I feel like that's almost the worst part, is that you have all these commingled. And I know that if you watch, especially, comedies in the 90s, right? Everything was a divorced family, blended family. And it was almost as if we were being propagandized into believing this was almost like the superior way to be, right? And so you have these like interesting characters and everybody's kind of connected to each other and see it so much better this way. But you look at the end result in society and we're not better off than we were 40 years ago. People are not more free than they were 40 years ago. They're not happier. And now what we're now starting to see, which we didn't even have 40 years ago, are people who are much older now, who their time's kind of up. They're not going to really be getting remarried again. And there seems to be, it may be a product of my own feed, seems to be a lot of people who experience regret. This was a mistake. Shouldn't have done this. It actually didn't turn out the way I thought it was. It didn't turn out the way I was promised that it would. Where is this great love of my life who was supposed to come along and save me? Why have these things not happened the way they were supposed to? Yeah. And I think it's because we bought into a lie, which is that everything's going to be better if you'll do this, if you'll blow everything up, and then it doesn't get better.
Yeah. It's, well, first of all, there's so many people in so much pain in marriages that are not working. Yep. And forget about the abusive and the, but just the marriages that are not working. And the difficulty is, the cultural moment of the day is individual autonomy. That is the highest value that's being, you do you. And it is so contrary to the reality of life, because we are not autonomous. We are part of a family, we are part of a neighborhood, we are part of a culture, and we're all in it together. And I think the biblical worldview says, no, you were given life by a creator who established that there was male and female, and he established marriage, and he showed us that it would be difficult and challenging, not because of the other person, but because of our own hearts. And so walking through and taking ownership for your own stuff and realizing that you're part of something that it's not about you. It's much bigger than you, and you are impacting so many people. And so just being able to step back and realize, what does individual autonomy do for you? It gives you the illusion that you're God. It gives you the illusion that you can do whatever you want. It's the illusion that you can redefine marriage, you can redefine gender, you can redefine whatever you want. And, you end up lonely, broken, and there is a path. There is a path towards the Creator, a path towards life in the kingdom, the abundant life. And yes, it is a path of suffering. There's going to be suffering. Nobody gets through this life without suffering. There's going to be difficulty. You're going to have to eat, your pride. You're going to have to ask for forgiveness. But if you would embark on that vision and especially, overcome the number one source of ignorance in the world today is people who have never read the Bible. It's the best-selling book of all time. People have read Harry Potter 10 times more than they've read the Bible. And Harry Potter is great literature, but this is to me the thing that used to be common. It used to be common that we would read this, and we might not all believe it, but we would at least understand the principles of wisdom that it contains. and the principles of the revelation of human nature that it contains. And that's what we had when we started this American experiment 250 years ago.
Yeah.
We had agreement that this was wisdom.
Right.
And let's build some foundations. And we have checks and balances because we know people are sinful and selfish. You know, so there were so many core things that were put together there. And so this is the path that we're on, of this individual autonomy, and it's leading to abortions, euthanasia, all kinds of stuff that is not life or liberty or happiness in any way of the world. And
But
that's the core to me.
Yeah.
But getting back to the divorce, the problem is the person feels the victim. It's the spouse's fault. And it's not. You have to take responsibility for yourself. You're responsible for your own happiness. And you have to be thinking, okay, because when you're a victim, there's nothing you can do about it. You're the victim. But if you take responsibility for who you are and start to see, what do I need to do to change? What do I need to do to be better?
Yeah.
It changes. I mean, it sounds trite, but it's true.
No, it's not trite. And we teach couples, hey, you're not responsible for 50% of the marriage each. You're both responsible for 100.
What does that mean?
It means that this isn't a 50-50 tit for tat. Keep it balanced.
You do your half, I do my half.
Yeah, it is. You are writing a blank check that everything you are and everything you own, it belongs to the other, and so is the other doing that. So you're basically both taking 100% responsibility, which brings dramatically different outcomes than trying to line up and do halvesies. You know, I'd rather have a 200 than 250s.
Right. No, that it absolutely makes sense. I think you're right when you said, you know, setting aside, there's obviously certain relationships people need to get out of. They're relationships that are truly unsafe, but that's not the majority of what we're seeing, right? It's just simply not.
No,
it's the minority.
Hard. I'm done.
Yeah. Or it's just boring.
Yeah.
It's not fun anymore. It's not what I thought it was going to be. It's not moving the way I had hoped. And so much of it seems to go back to this idea that if life is not turning out the way I want, then I'm out. But I keep blaming this for it. But there's one other phenomenon I want to talk to you guys about. And I know we're short on time. The comparison trap, which is there seems to be this phenomenon that's taking place where especially young women, not to throw them under the bus, but it seems to come almost more from that side of it, who are on social media and they see relationships, they see travel, they see some girls, you know, I'm here this weekend, I'm in this location, and they post about it. And they want their life to reflect this. And if my life's not reflecting this, then my life's no good. It's terrible. My relationship isn't good. If I don't have a husband who can provide this and this, it's not good. And I think that's also contributing to this almost epidemic of dissatisfaction that we're seeing.
Right. It's worse than that. She sees somebody who bakes well. I don't do that. Cook, you know, this is creative. Look at those kids. You know, there's so many different ways that you can compare yourself to others and come up short. And none of them have it all together.
Right.
But it looks like it. I always remember when Michael and Sammy were out in Portland after they were first married. I thought she loved it. I thought, oh no. She got back, she said, that was the worst thing I ever did. You'd have never known that from looking at her Facebook page. So, you know, it's just not real.
It's not real.
Yeah.
It's not.
We compare.
So many people are young. They know it's not real, right? If you said to them, you know this, well, yeah. But there's something innate inside of them that says, no, if someone else is having this, then this is what I want my relationship, my life, my, you know, and young men do it too. I don't want to say it's only young women. Young men do it too. But I think young men do a different thing, which is when they see comparison they can't match up to, they shrink and they just avoid, which is why we have also an epidemic of gamers. And not to throw them all under the bus, but too many guys, I think, who sit around and they lose themselves in an imaginary world where they are the conqueror, they're powerful, they're competent in this virtual world because they feel so incompetent and powerless in the real world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do we break that? How do we change that?
You know, the root of all of it is identity. You know, who are we? We have been made in the image of a creator God. And so discovering that is the key.
Well, you said the word identity. I think that is the core of it, right? We have a lack of identity. We don't know who we are. But part of the reason, and maybe this takes us full circle, part of the reason that as a culture, we no longer know who we are is because we don't have families and family units that are reinforcing for us who we are or what our value is or what our place is. So going back to what you were saying earlier about children as an asset, when you as a child have a place in the family that fits, when you have value within this space, within this ecosystem, within this community of people,
You know who you are.
you know who you are.
Yeah. And that's the design for you to discover your identity is to be brought into the world by a mom and dad and shown step by step who you are. You know, you're gifted at this, you're anointed at that, and to walk through life until you're able to step into it.
Yeah.
But you've been helped along, you know, within the context of a healthy, you know, a healthy, grounded family.
Which takes us back to this concept, and we're doing a show on this in a few weeks, of the family and parental alienation that's kind of taken over from social media. And it's become generationally, especially among Gen Z, it's become a huge thing, right? But it's such a trap because young people are led to believe the more you isolate yourself, the more you cut people out of your life, the more free you'll become. And it's just a lie. It's this idea that you're now free. You're not free. You're isolated. You're alone. You don't have the people who actually care and love for you the most. And so then you keep replacing them with cheap imitations of people who go along with everything you say. It's almost like that Michael Jackson effect, where Michael Jackson would surround himself with only people who would agree with him. And so it was hard for him to see why people were so critical of a lot of the things he was doing, especially, you know, within the context of kids in his realm, because everyone around him said, no, this is normal. This is fine, because he believed it was. And I think that's happening to a lot of people who cut everyone else out of their lives. If you can't have hard conversations, if you can't have confrontation's not allowed anymore, right? And we're living in a society where if you want to confront a problem, you're toxic and you're overbearing and all these buzzwords that get thrown around. So, you know, I think one thing that has to happen is going back to what you said about identity. We've got to reinforce identity, but it can only happen in the context of a community within a family that says, I know who I am because I know what my place is in this place. And I think that's why the enemy works so hard to destroy families, to disrupt families, to tear them apart.
Yeah. And, you know, obviously the design was for you to be brought into the world in a healthy family. But, you know, Jesus knew that this was going to happen. And, you know, what he did is he came and laid it all on the line to redeem that. And so if you don't have a healthy family, you can at least in Christ, you can start to learn your identity, that you are important enough to him for him to die for you. And then you can join a spiritual family that has 20-year-olds and 40-year-olds and 60-year-olds and 80-year-olds who've walked the journey for a long time, and you can be made whole again. I mean, that's my story. We've been made whole again as a biological family by joining a spiritual family that coached us and brought us along.
Beautifully said.
But they have to want it, and they don't see it. And that's why suicides and everything are so high.
Yeah.
But there is hope.
Yeah.
There is hope.
There is. And as you said, to find that community, you've got to find it. And it's a powerful thing. Denis, Marianne Beausejour, thank you both so much. Love you both.
Love you.
Thank you, Ben.
We'll see you guys next time.